Thank you, Brett, and thank you to all of our panelists for this wonderful session. I think one of the areas that we really did hear a fantastic set of information around was myth busting. In the world of thinking about health inequality and health inequity, we typically would say part of the reason we have inequality is that we don't have enough supply. And we've heard that that's just not true when we hear the stat around 50% of vaccines are being destroyed. A second myth was that healthcare is such a unique industry that it can only function based off of things that are designed for that industry. And I think we've heard multiple times throughout this session that we can learn from other sectors, both in supply chains and in other areas. Now, I'd like to move on to the final session of the day. Thank you all for your continued attention through this event. And no conversation on health equity would be complete without putting attention on financing. As our panelists make their way to the stage, this session is titled Moving from Wealth Equals Health to Health Equals Wealth. And I'd like to remind you that please to continue to submit questions throughout the session using your app here. And now I'm going to turn the stage over to Jeff Weisel, Managing Director of PRMA Consulting, as he guides us through this last conversation for today.
Thank you, Tony, and good afternoon, everyone. And I guess we can now say good morning to those of you joining us from Europe. As Tony mentioned, this is the final panel session of the day. And we're going to look at what's arguably the biggest barrier to achieving health equity and access, that's how it's paid for. Before we jump in to the details, I want to first introduce our distinguished panel. First, joining us from Taiwan, we're privileged to have Dr. Li Po-chang, Director General of the National Health Insurance Administration in Taiwan. Dr. Li, but prior to this role, has had a distinguished career in public health, among other roles as the chairperson of the board of the Taiwan Organ Registry and Sharing Center, and as well as superintendent of Tainan Hospital. So welcome from Taiwan, Dr. Li. Next, we have also online, we have Jeremy Lim. Jeremy is well known to many of you, is Director for Global Health at the Public Health School of the National University of Singapore. He works at initiatives in health system strengthening, universal health coverage, brings diverse and unique perspectives, having spent substantial time in the public and private healthcare across Asia, as well as policy advisory with the Singapore Ministry of Health, the World Bank, and the World Health Organization. And with all that, he somehow finds time to also be the co-founder and CEO of a company called Amelie, which is a Singapore-based startup looking at the health benefits of the microbiome. Welcome, Jeremy. Next, also online, we have Silver Chen from Hong Kong. Silver is Oncology Access Implementation Lead for emerging markets for Pfizer. Silver has more than 20 years of experience in market access, public affairs, and laboratory science, including spearheading development of implementation of market access plans for new product launches and managing payer interactions and key private payers, public and private payers, to gain, enhance, and protect access to Pfizer products, first in Canada and now for many years across Asia Pacific. And last but not least, thank you for joining me on stage so I don't feel totally lonely, is Dr. Xianchen Lei, CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. AmCham is the largest and most active international business association in Singapore and Southeast Asia, representing nearly 600 companies. She, like Jeremy, also wears many hats. She's also adjunct associate professor at the National University of Singapore School of Public Health, member of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health Advisory Board, vice president of the Precision Public Health Asia Society, and board member of Talent Trust. That's a lot of jobs. So welcome to all of you, and let's get started. I want to set a little bit of context before we get into the discussion. First of all, I guess, why did we call this session Moving from Wealth Equals Health to Health Equals Wealth? And the reason we looked at it that way is historically, countries and individuals who had resources, had wealth, were able to get better access to the sort of health care and health outcomes that they needed, whereas those that didn't have maybe those resources were less able to do that. And we want to move to a model where both countries as well as individuals are actually investing in health, and because not only for the better health outcomes that produces, but also has proven better economic outcomes as well. So that really sets the tone. And we talked about that in terms of this, the subtitle was Building Value-Based Healthcare Financing Models that Deliver Equitable Access. But what does that mean? So in a value-based healthcare system, providers are reimbursed based on the quality of patient health outcomes rather than the quantity of services rendered. And this incentivizes better healthcare and lowering costs associated with inefficient or inappropriate healthcare resources utilization. Value-based healthcare depends on agreed frameworks for assessing and evaluating the impact on clinical and economic outcomes of new and existing technologies, ranging from medicines and vaccines to diagnostics and devices. It also depends on the quality of evidence and outcomes data and cooperation among different stakeholders within the healthcare system to ensure successful implementation. Now, in some markets, healthcare financing is largely led by governments, for example, in Taiwan. And in other markets, private payers such as insurance companies and even employers play a complementary role. In this session, we're going to explore how different healthcare systems evaluate and finance the introduction of innovative medicines and other new technologies that can improve outcomes and support equitable access. Now, for this session, we're going to have a little bit different format than the earlier sessions in that we're going to start with a presentation from Dr. Lee. So the first question which he's going to help us answer is, how are innovative medicines and other technologies evaluated and funded in different public health systems across Asia? So I'll ask Dr. Lee now to share his screen and give us his overview on Taiwan.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Po-Chang Lee. Actually, I'm the transplantation surgeon before, and I'm the Director General of National Health Insurance Administration in Taiwan. Yeah. So based on and with the doctor before, so I know every device or every product is, if it is good for a patient, I think we should pay for our patient. Yeah. However, who we pay the money, I think this is a challenge for the national health insurance. This is just a brief characteristics of the National Health Insurance Administration in Taiwan. Yeah, in Taiwan, we are just a single payer system. I think it is very important, quite completely different from other Western countries. It is also based on commercial insurance system. Yeah, in Taiwan, around 93% of medical providers, they have the contract with our NHI. So most of the people, they can get the good medical service from our medical providers. Yeah, and the payment is just the group budget payment system. Yeah, I think this is very important for us, how to control the finance. Yeah. And in this PowerPoint, you can see in the right upper side corner, yeah, generally for many public health survey, they always say Taiwan has offered the good access and the low cost, and the people in Taiwan, they have a short waiting time. Yeah. I think this is very important for us to get the good reputation. So it means high, affordable and high quality the healthcare system. Yeah. However, in Taiwan, the medical providers, they are not very satisfied to our NHI. They think we just squeeze them a lot. But the people in Taiwan, 93.8%, they are very happy to have the Taiwan National Health Insurance System. Yeah. So you can see here the certification rate is very high in Taiwan. Yeah. And what challenge we are facing and the solution we proposed. Yeah. So in Taiwan, you can see that generally we found that the drug fee increased a lot. And we also found some diagnosis fee also increased a lot. However, for the medical providers, the consultation fee or some treatment, I think the payment looks squeezed. Yeah. So it's not enough. Yeah. So this is the reason why we have to control unnecessary waste of in the drug fee or in the diagnosis. Yeah. So I think reform Taiwan NHI, the implementation of referral system is very important. Why? I want to say in that way, because in Taiwan, all the patients, they want to see the doctor, they can go to medical center, go to the regional hospital or local hospital or clinic, depending on what they want. But we know the co-payment is not very high in Taiwan. Yeah. So this is the reason why all the patients, they like to go to the medical center. Over there, the medical providers will offer some CT scan or MRI. So it is very expensive. So I think some diagnosis is not necessary. This is very important for us. Yeah. So we want to reduce unnecessary medical visit. Yeah, I think this is very important. We wish to cherish the medical resource and reduce some total medical expenditure. We wish in Taiwan, yeah. So for all the medical payment there, we just pay, we call the point, not the true cash. So this is the reason why if the point is too high and the gross budget is fixed, it means that you cannot get more money. Yeah. So this is a challenge for us. Yeah. But however, if the patient they can reduce some unnecessary medical visit, yeah, per year, then we can find we can get a significant and cost down. I think this is very important for us to control unnecessary medical visit. Recently in Japan, in the past, for the aging people, yeah, they don't need some copayment. But recently, they also thought the copayment is also very important in Japan for the aging people. Yeah. So how does Taiwan use innovative model to provide access to innovative technology? Yeah. In Taiwan, as I say, for the patient, they can go to a hospital to accept a CT scan or MRI, and they can go to a hospital to accept coronal fibroscope, sonogram. I think in this image, generally, if you go to another hospital to accept second opinion, yeah, or you don't trust this doctor, you go to another hospital, maybe they will offer you repeated examination, yeah. So this is not good for the patient because they can get more radiation dose, yeah. However, recently we have the medical cloud, yeah. We upload all this kind of image in the cloud. So you go to a different hospital or you go to the clinic, you can see this image very easy, yeah. So this is very important for us, yeah. Because in that we can share all the medical image very well, yeah. And recently we also have the virtual NHI card to facilitate mobile usage. We want to reduce the equipment necessary to deliver medical service, yeah. So generally, for people, yeah, if they stay in a high mountain or they in some island, yeah, sometimes the doctor goes there to see him, but in that way, this kind of home care, maybe the patient they cannot get enough information, yeah. So if the doctor they want to see the patient, they have to put the NHI card in the card reader, yeah. So in that way, for him, it's possible to see this medical information in the cloud, yeah. But recently, we use the virtual NHI card. In that way, the doctor just scan the QR code. It's easy for him to see the medical information in the cloud. So in that way, they can offer the good medical service to the patient. Yeah. And we know the precision medicine is very important there, especially, for now have some innovative drug, especially target therapy or immuno-oncology therapy. Then, and it is always on, we call the precision NGS study, yeah. However, the price is expensive, yeah. Whether, the treatment is very effective, this is very important. So we have the fixed gross budget, yeah. So we wish to introduce horizon scanning, yeah, to include a new medical technology that may be included in the assessment of this drug, whether it is very efficient, yeah. And the reimbursement, we use the HTA to estimate the benefit. I think this is very important for us. However, for any innovative drug or some technology, whether it is very useful in the real world, I think a reassessment is very important. So in Taiwan, we carry out the HTR, we call the Health Technology Reassessment, over a period of years, yeah. And in that way, we can review whether this payment is benefit or non-benefit. I think this is very important in Taiwan, yeah. So, for example, yeah, she's an IO drug, immuno-oncology drug, we say immune checkpoint inhibitor. The price is around 3 times compared to the traditional target therapy, yeah. But we found that the effect is not better for this kind of drug compared to the target therapy based on we call the hepatocellular carcinoma or gastric cancer, yeah. So we ask, the pharmaceutical company, yeah, it should reduce the price, yeah. So I think this is a very important finding, and we submit this paper to the journal, yeah, and immediately within 1 month they accept this paper, yeah. And for the United States, the FDA also got the same conclusion with us after 1 year, yeah. So I think in Taiwan, since we have the single payer system, yeah, we make use of all the information, yeah, to get the good strategy or the policy to treat a patient, yeah. And this is also another interesting finding, yeah. We found for the patient with the hepatitis C, yeah, some of them we call the hepatoma, yeah. So for this kind of patient, in the beginning, we thought for this hepatocellular carcinoma, even they also have the hepatitis C, whether it is necessary to treat the hepatitis C, yeah. And it means that whether it is worthwhile to offer this antiviral agent, yeah. However, in our big data, we found even this patient already have the hepatocellular carcinoma, we still treat them with the antiviral agent. It is also get a good result of the survival rate, yeah. So this is very significant. So we still offer this kind of treatment, yeah. And in Taiwan, since we also have this kind of image upload in our cloud, yeah. So recently, we know in the National Taiwan University, yeah, they found for the early pancreas cancer, sometimes it is very difficult to have the early diagnosis. However, use our big data, they also use the AI model, yeah, and they can early detect the pancreas cancer. And recently, this paper was published in the radiology. This is a very, very high SCI paper, yeah. So it's good for us, yeah. And we also have many different big medical centers. They also use our image to do more study, yeah. So I think in Taiwan we have very powerful and big data. I think in the future you can cooperate with Taiwan and we can do more research to our patient, yeah. And in Taiwan, since we are more than 10 million people, they have got we call the My Health Bank, yeah. I think this is very important, yeah. So in this way, this information based on the patient, and now some industry, they also have the contract with our people, yeah, and they get this kind of information. We use the SDK software development kit, yeah. So in that way, they can get more information from patient themselves, yeah, and then they can do in some program, yeah, to offer more good healthcare to our people. So this is very good model for us, yeah. And finally, I want to say thank you to very much, yeah, because in Taiwan we do believe, yeah, national health insurance should do something good for our patient, yeah. Whether some people they argued with this is the social health welfare or the social insurance, yeah. So this is just in the conflict. However, I think for each government is the same, yeah. If the finance is good, then I think we can offer all the new drug or some innovative technology, yeah. However, I think the expenditure increase gradually, yeah. So how can control the good expenditure is a challenge for government, yeah. But I do believe if the healthcare is good, yeah, and it's good for people, and I think that the political stability will be good, yeah. And recently, we already published 3 books in Mandarin, in Chinese, yeah. And they are all we call our strategy, how to run the national health insurance. And we also published a book we call the Digital Healthcare in Taiwan. It is published by Springer, yeah. And so far, there are already more than 54,000 people. They download this book, yeah. This is open access and free charge, yeah. And it is, I think it's good for all the people in the world, yeah. If they are interested in public health or in the medical care, I think our experience will be the reference for you, yeah. Thank you very much for offering me this opportunity to share Taiwan National Health Insurance. I'm Director Lee, and I'm happy to have more discussion with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for that comprehensive overview of the Taiwan system. as someone myself who has been interacting with the NHIA and the Taiwan government for many years, it's always great to see the continued progress and development of that system. So congratulations on that. Specifically, also, it was interesting how the NHIA approaches the evaluation and funding of innovative medicines in a single-payer system. So with that, also, I want to turn now to Jeremy. Looking at multi-payer systems like Singapore, for example, right? How do like a country like Singapore approach the same question? How do they evaluate and look at funding of innovative medicines? And obviously, for those of us in Singapore, it's been a lot in the news recently around the funding mechanisms for new cancer drugs. I think I've seen a comment or two from Jeremy online about this very topic. And also, if you can put it in the context that we heard earlier about the Healthier SG, the new sort of framework for the system. So Jeremy, over to you.
Yep, sure. And thank you very much, Jeff, for the invitation to share some perspectives. I think that every government ultimately has to figure out how to balance cost, quality, and access. And this is determined by what society determines, by really what society values. And here in Singapore, as opposed to in Taiwan, Singapore believes in a free market across the board, including for healthcare. Therefore, if you think about the Singapore healthcare system, we're fundamentally at least a two-tier healthcare system, where in the private sector, doctors, pharmaceutical companies are free to charge whatever the market will bear. And in the public sector, the government, very similar to what happens in Taiwan, is much more interventionist, using HTA and other modalities to assess value. However, Taiwan is world-class in its data collection and its use of data. Singapore is not so sophisticated, at least not yet, but we hope to catch up soon. And when we have the same data sophistication, we hope to be able to make better decisions in this space. And I guess one of the insights here in Singapore is that much as the government likes to differentiate between the private sector and the public sector, we are still one closed ecosystem. And we use the same doctors, we have the same pool of patients as well as doctors look at pricing across. And hence, in recent years, as Jeff, you mentioned the cancer drug list that takes effect from 1st September this year, and from April next year, it will take effect in the private health insurance space also. And this is really to calibrate, because out of control healthcare costs are not good for anybody, whether the private or the public sector. And that's what Singapore has been moving towards. And maybe just one last quick comment about Healthier SG. The numbers have come out yesterday during the parliamentary debates, and it's serious money. It's $1 billion to kickstart and 400 million Singapore dollars every year after that to emphasize preventive care. Right? And I want to be clear, this is new money. This is new money from the health ministry. This is new money to the family doctors to focus not just on curative care, but to focus on preventive health, to enable Singaporeans to live the healthiest lives that we can. And the primary motivation is quality of life. The secondary motivation is to enable Singapore to bend the cost curve. We are now at about 4 to 5% GDP spent on healthcare. Certainly with aging, with the explosion of chronic disease, this will go up. But we do not want to see it go up to 12, 15%. And Healthier SG is one of the pivotal efforts to try to make this happen. Thanks, Jeff, and back to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Xian, turning to you, taking a broader perspective beyond medicines, how do you see governments in the region viewing and assessing the value of innovation? And particularly, does this look different for other types of interventions like vaccines, diagnostics, devices, even procedures?
Thank you very much, Jeff, for including me. I found the Taiwan example, of course, very inspirational, given that Taiwan is also my motherland. When you look at how the government approaches innovation, clearly Taiwan has a very thought out process. But generally speaking, here I am representing the private sector to some degree as the CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce. We find that there's still a very vendor-like relationship, right? So there's this thinking that we just want you to get your prices down as low as possible. Preferably, if you take what number we give you, that's what we want, right? But what I and many others have been saying is we would like to be viewed as partners in this process of evaluating what healthcare really needs to be accessible and what treatments, diagnostics, all of that. And the idea behind that would be through this idea of thinking about the products in a more holistic way. So when you talk about products, so your question is, does it matter if it's a vaccine or a diagnostic, a pharmaceutical or medical technology, a device? Well, in some ways it does, because the development timeline is so different for each of the different products or treatments and therapies that we're talking about. But we have seen also that when there is a will, there is a way to accelerate the adoption of new technologies. Look at the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines, right? Look at the COVID-19 diagnostic tests. You know, you look at pharmaceutical treatments even for COVID-19. COVID-19, while it was a terrible thing to happen to all of us, really showed us that we could do so much more and so much faster than we were used to. Now, on the medical device side, that one also is very iterative. Every year, there may be new features that are being launched. Some of it may not actually be a piece of the technology, but it could be on the digital front, right? The Internet of Things. How is your device connected to the internet? How is it connected to remote patient monitoring? All of these things have a component in which there is value to be presented. Then when you talk to the government and say, hey, because we've developed this new feature, here is the way we would like to be compensated from a pricing perspective, that's where it gets really difficult to provide a valuation on these types of, additional features. And I think the approach that we need to take is really looking at patients, right? As Jeremy said in Singapore, we're really looking hard at quality of life. How do we improve that through prevention? But that can carry along the entire way on the patient journey. How does quality of life improve when we're able to, for example, have an Abbott Libre on my arm, right, to be able to do continuous glucose monitoring? What is the value of that to the healthcare system, aside from improving the outcomes later on? But what is the value of that to quality of life? Those are the kinds of things that we need to think about.
Great, thank you, Shen. Silver, turning to you, representing, I guess, the whole industry, not just one company, Pfizer, of course. But Shen referenced the way that companies like yours are often treated as vendors in a very sort of transactional way when they speak with governments. But one of the outcomes, more positive outcomes, I guess, of the whole COVID pandemic is that companies like yours now have kind of a seat at the table to discussing broader issues and planning. So from your perspective, how can pharma companies, other industry players, engage successfully with governments to ensure access to innovative medicines and other new technologies?
Well, thank you very much, Jeff, for the opportunity and for this appearance. I'm glad to be speaking alongside those very esteemed panelists here. So first of all, I think as Shen referenced earlier, as an industry, we very much willing to partner with the government to co-create solutions, novel solutions for sustainable financing mechanisms and to continue investment in health so that we ensure no patients are left behind. Government, a little bit encouragement from the government to partner with its private industry goes a long way in creating those constructive industry-government dialogue, which can lead to brand new solutions maybe neither of us have thought of before. So that is what we think is a good start, is to maybe look at us less as a vendor, what I would typically call, like, we are not the makers of paper clips, right? And we are sophisticated medicines or technology manufacturers, which has put in a lot of research and development, a lot of investment in it. So you can also see the good, beautiful example many panelists have mentioned about the COVID-19 mRNA technology, quick advancement with the government dialogue with numerous governments around the world, we were able to, right, cross some barriers, right? Together, we can get earlier regulatory approvals and earlier reimbursement to patients so that they can access it a lot easier, a lot earlier. And in the end of the day, we take care of the patients, right? So this is the first point I want to stress is we very much welcome the dialogue with government on co-creating novel solutions to make the system sustainable at the same time, also put patients first so that they can access the treatments or medicines or vaccines when they need it. The second point I want to make is also government, when governments are looking at cost containment, let's look a little bit beyond pure cost containment, right? And focus on the value creation. Value-based pricing, I'm glad to see Dr. Lee highlight some of the examples the industry has made, pay for performance based on clinical outcomes. I think in general, we welcome those opportunities to discuss with the government. A dose of caution, let's say, is that we also need to be having the proper dialogue so that we use the proper clinical outcomes. And it's practical in nature so we don't overburden the system and the innovator, as well as being a fair reward for innovation. One thing I think we do need to keep in mind is that research and development takes a long time. And then all the investment we did in mRNA technology back in the last 10 years finally bear fruit this time, right? But we need to make sure the system is still there, the reward is there, so that when people come with the breakthrough technology or solution, the rewards, the investments are being rewarded, and then so the industry can be sustainable as well. So I just wanted to remind that everyone involved, particularly our government stakeholders, they can also keep in mind it's not purely cost containment, and we also need to make sure the life science industry is sustainable. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Silver. A quick follow-up for the group. I think we were talking about Taiwan and Singapore, which are both quite mature, high-income markets. We started the day with a talk from Secretary of Treasury from the Philippines. So does someone want to pick up the question about what we talked about? How do more emerging markets, governments, systems, where are they in the process, and how can they learn from maybe more advanced markets like Taiwan and Singapore? Anybody want to take that? Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, let me start the ball rolling. Jeff, as horrible as it sounds, you have to cut the code according to the cloth you have. And if the budget is finite and everybody's budget is finite, we just have to decide where are the resources allocated that create the most value, and be very transparent about it. Like, I'm sure that our colleagues in the pharmaceutical industry would much rather have a transparent and honest discussion where the rules are clear, right? Where the governments come out and say, this is the budget I have. Do you have a solution for me? Do you not? Can we be creative about it? Otherwise, let's not dance around and it's just counterproductive. And here, Jeff, to your specific question around what the low and middle income countries can benefit from, a lot of the tools in HTA are really portable across geographies. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. I do personally think that the better resource countries can take a leadership role in setting up multi-geography databases to enable better reimbursement decisions to be made. Because it's not just about the really technical models that can be built to develop the cost effectiveness really analysis modules, but we also need high quality local data. And there are some things that we're just better together, that we can do it together. And if we look at the world of clinical studies, maybe just the last point that I'll make is that it is the norm today that companies like Weisel would do large-scale clinical studies in multiple countries. We don't see the same in the HTA world, where we all agree that we are better together. Let's all agree on minimum data sets. These are the models that we will use. And this then reduces the price of data collection, the price of data analysis, and it reduces the price of what the pharmaceutical companies have to invest for market access. And if we bring down the price or the resources needed for everyone, then we can have the opportunity to create more value. So I would urge all of us to be smart about it. Thanks, Jeff. Back to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And you want to?
And maybe I could add a little bit onto what Jeremy is saying. For these low and middle income countries, I think it's even more imperative that they do look at value, because you certainly don't have the resources to just spend on any kind of diagnostics or therapies that don't bring any improvement in quality of life or anything like that, right? If anything, these countries really need to focus on very targeted approaches to value-based healthcare solutions. The other thing is, we often talk about premium segment and value segment. And sometimes it makes me cringe because I don't want to deny a certain segment of the population, global population, access to a premium segment product. Because why are they not, going to get the best thing possible? But that's where best is subjective. When you talk about value, if as a country you've defined a specific target or goal that you want to get to on the population health level, then that means it's possible that the value segment product, without all the bells and whistles, without the connection to the internet, the ability to do sensing, in a very sophisticated, maybe that isn't necessary to achieve the goal of your country. And it doesn't matter what segment, if you're a lower middle income, high income country, what is your goal? What are you trying to get to? And that then can help us define what is this value-based healthcare that we can deliver using what products that can support that.
Thank you, Shen. So moving to our next question, we're starting to see new alternative kinds of funding models, funding mechanisms, sources of funding to support patient access. And maybe I want to start with Dr. Lee. You outlined a bit in your talk about how the NHIA assesses new technologies, but we're getting into some very new areas, like, for example, cell and gene therapy, where a single treatment could have a lifetime benefit. So it's a very different kind of proposition from even the immuno-oncology products you mentioned. So how does the NHI adapt to these kind of new technologies in terms of thinking about things that might not fit into your existing funding models and mechanisms? Dr. Lee.
Okay, basically, for a new product, sometimes they don't have a very well experience. However, our expert will discuss whether this is very efficient from literature. Yeah, it means that some products are not, be used in Taiwan. Yeah. They don't have any clinical trial here, yeah. So this is a challenge for us. However, we always offer our patients the first priority to use this drug, yeah. So I want to say that since Taiwan is just a single payer system, yeah. In Taiwan, we don't have a so-called cancer fund or something else, yeah. All the people in Taiwan, we do wish Taiwan can offer every treatment to them, even something is very new, yeah. Recently, some treatment to we call for different kind of cancer, yeah, and for some rare disease, they always need a new drug, yeah. But in Taiwan, we try to do our best to give the patient this opportunity to treat, yeah. But since so far in Taiwan, our drug fee already occupied 28.9% of the global budget, yeah. So this is just, attention to all the medical providers. They cannot get the reasonable reward. Yeah. So you ask me whether I have any strategy. Yeah. I try to use the co-payment program, yeah, and to reduce unnecessary waste. In that way, for different new drug, we can have this opportunity to offer it to our patient. Since in our national health insurance law, yeah, we don't get the permission to ask the people to pay more. Yeah. Especially for some patients with we call the critical illness, yeah. So they are always covered by our national health insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Jeremy, to you, what role can be played by private payers in this discussion? Insurance, employers, how can government and private payers work together to address some of these new models?
Yeah. Well, firstly, maybe Dr. Lee, may I respectfully disagree a little bit with you that in cell and gene-based therapy, the co-payment elements are not likely to be very effective because the prices are just so large. It has to be institutional funding rather than individual funding. That said, the challenge, Jeff, is not that these therapies are not game-changing, they're not life-saving, and over a lifetime, most of them likely will turn out to be cost-effective. The challenge is really total budget impact, and every financial player in the ecosystem wants to cap their potential downside losses. Every insurer will have an annual upper limit. Like in the Singapore system, the MediShield Life Integrated Plan has got $1 million cap for each calendar year. So perhaps this is something I would maybe challenge Silver on behalf, as a representative of the pharmaceutical industry. How then do we spread the cost of these phenomenal therapies so that year on year the total budget impact can be managed, because governments just don't have the money to pay $3 million here or $4 million there. Silver, sorry, over to you.
Yeah, so Silver, if you could respond to what Jeremy asked, and then follow on that also, is, you know, as Jeremy highlighted, this is in some ways more a financing problem than a health problem, right? In terms of figuring out how to pay for these things. Mm-hmm. So beyond, I guess, the question Jeremy asked as well, where are you seeing in all your markets, you know, where models have been implemented with non-traditional players like, say, banks, or even private investors like private equity firms, or fintech players, you know, companies that are historically not necessarily involved in financing healthcare? So where are you seeing these kind of things around, you know, around your regions?
Thank you for the opportunity. So, Jeremy, you're right. So I think it is a tough question, right? I would say actually slightly different view on the HTA part with Jeremy is that maybe for gene therapy, the specific example, it might be the best use in a single payer system like Taiwan. That might be the best evaluation because it's so cost effective, actually, right? As you mentioned, you only do this one intervention and you don't have to do any cost anymore in the next 10, 20 years, whatever the treatment duration is. So that where you can demonstrate good cost effectiveness, right? My only caution to your previous point, Jeremy, is that the copy and paste of HTA assessment between markets is difficult to do because your cost elements is different, your health infrastructure is different, your treatment patterns are different. Maybe this comparative, what we call comparative, might be totally different in your market. So I would caution against copy and paste that.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit more
really,
effort.
Silver, yeah, definitely. That's why local data collection is absolutely critical to allow for nuanced and thoughtful adaptation.
Yeah.
So
for the private sector, maybe quickly for the private sector, Jeff, for that question, microfinancing and all that, is that I think a few ways. It's still early. We are deeply involved in some of the solution creation, and so one is government to provide a little bit fundamental support for the industry to facilitate them to play. One area they could do in private insurance, I think it's happening in the US now, is starting to pilot now, is maybe they can build a consortium, like a pool of money that might potentially solve this gene therapy kind of problem where patients move from one provider to another. If a single payer, you don't have that problem, right? But in the private sector, you have that. But if everybody pays based on the population you cover into a pool, that might be a model. The private insurance could work. We have also worked with some fintech and some solutions, but we probably don't have time to do. But I was just saying we are willing to partner with all of you.
I want to give Dr. Lee a minute just to respond. I know he's been, we're all talking about Taiwan. We should give him the floor to give a response.
Yeah, I want to have a short comment because since our national health insurance have the fixed global budget, and not unlimited. So generally, for some new drug, we say we restrict some indication, so we can offer treatment to all the patients. Yeah. So in that way, we try to control our budget. But frankly speaking, I don't think it's reasonable because for most of the patients, they wish to get the best drug. It is not only the cost effective. So now we just contact with our insurance company, yeah, and then we let all the insurance company know what we can do with our national health insurance. It is very transparent in that way. And for the health insurance company, yeah, they know they want to cover what we cannot do. Yeah. So in that way, I think it will be very, very good for the Taiwan people if they want to get the insurance to have the health coverage. Yeah, and then they know what and our national health insurance is not enough, and then the commercial health insurance will cover. I think in that way, cooperative is good in Taiwan soon. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I think this is going to be an ongoing debate, which I would say if we were all in person to be continuing in the bar after the meeting, but we'll have to figure out another way to do that. Shen, I want to turn to you about other stakeholders in the system, public health officials, health policy, patient groups. What role can they play in these discussions?
Well, it's actually quite interesting to hear the different perspectives on this panel. One perspective might be from an employer thinking. So this morning I was at a human capital conference where many employers are in the room talking about employee well-being and welfare. Now, many times we talk about things like, we want flexible working arrangements, but actually healthcare benefits is a huge piece of that. So why not, when we have consortia of insurance companies or potentially, the manufacturers and the government, why not also include employers? I mean, definitely, because I am American, we know that there is one model in which your insurance is tied to your employer. It's not the best model, but it is one that has been working for a number of years in the US. But that just also shows you that the employer also has a role to play for the adult population and also for their employees' families. So it's possible that when we come to financing, employers who have tremendous resources might be willing to put in also into the bank savings for their employees to tap onto, in addition to the insurance that they purchase on behalf of their employees. Just a thought.
Thank you. We have just time for, I guess, sort of a takeaway question, if you will. We talked about, as we're moving towards value-based kind of systems. So if I can ask each of the panelists, maybe to look out in the next 5 years, and where do you think we're going to be? How far will we have sort of progressed, or will we be at should we say, the ideal state of a value-based healthcare system, or will we still be on the journey? Where do you think? Maybe Shen, I'll start with you.
Oh boy, I feel like I've been working on value-based healthcare for at least 5 years. And I also got a lot of help from Jeremy along the way, and yet we have made a little bit of progress. We've seen that in pockets around the world, including in other parts like Europe and the US. But at the same time, in 5 years, maybe we will get to a place where we have this better opportunity to share data, as has already been discussed. I mean, at least in my time when thinking about trying to get in there with risk-sharing proposals and whatnot, the biggest barrier was still the data component. And then there was the integration piece, the interoperability piece of monitoring, as Prof. Lee said, around the reassessment, right? It's not just health technology assessment, it's the reassessment. When you get to the reassessment piece, wow, that one's going to be difficult. I hope we make more progress along that front too. So data, reassessments, and this ability to think bigger.
Thank you. Silver, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's for most of the single payer, more mature healthcare systems, I think we will be making some good progress, as highlighted by Dr. Lee. There's a couple of already happening in Taiwan. I'd see in 5 years, maybe we'll do more. The traditional, if you include the traditional financial-based sort of risk-sharing agreement, that's kind of more common in many markets. But for truly innovative, clinical-based, outcome-based innovative agreements, I think, as mentioned earlier, data and the cost of doing so, it will be is dramatic. So it might be a little slower on that front. And I think this will be most likely progress in the single payer system. In middle income, where it's out of pocket, probably still pricing will be still probably the main driver, I would say.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Last year, Sian and I founded the Precision Public Health Asia Society to really bring that platform where payers, digital health companies, technologists, governments, academics can all come together to discuss these issues, because the collection of data and the use of data is expensive, but it's not unsolvable. The bigger probably elephant in the room that we're not talking, that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about, is trust. And do we trust each other enough to share very transparently, very honestly, the data on outcomes, on pricing? Because remember, Jeff, our value is very simplistically quality over the resource we put into it. And if we don't have the numerator, we don't have the denominator, it's very hard to get started. And so if you wrap the trust bubble around the value equation, that's the piece that's missing. And certainly societies like Precision Public Health Asia, the university, governments we have the opportunity, and we must use these platforms to get ourselves talking, get ourselves to that position of trust where we can move forward. And I think COVID has shown that we're all in this together. We need each other. So let's build on this momentum and really get a health system that's about value and the greatest benefit to all of us as patients and as citizens.
Thank you. Dr. Lee, I want to give you the final word.
Okay, thank you. Since I'm working in the hospital for 40 years, and now I work in the government for 60 years already, so I do believe, to be the good government, they should offer the good medical care to all the people in the country, But how can we do that? Since in Taiwan, we are just a single-payer system, we have the gross budget to run, So in that way, we can control the medical expenditure, depend on our decision, But I do believe co-payment will be very, very important for medical providers and for people to control unnecessary waste. In that way, I do believe, we have enough budget to offer good medical care and I think some medical drug to all people. And then finally, I do believe, and since the new technology developed gradually, so generally in the government, they don't have enough ability to offer all medical care. So I think cooperate with the health insurance, commercial health insurance is very important. And that in that way, and to let the people get the best medical care. Thank you.
Thank you all. Now I know we're out of time. For those who have sent questions in, we had such a great panel. I think they answered all the questions you guys have sent in already. So well done to my panelists for anticipating this. So I want to take time now to thank our panelists again. Dr. Lee, thank you. Jeremy, Silver, and Chen, thank you again for a great discussion. And this is the last panel. I want to take one more minute on behalf of PRMA Consulting to thank not only these panelists, but all the panelists we've had throughout the day, some great discussions. And I also want to thank Zuellig Pharma for giving us the opportunity to work with you as knowledge partners in this event. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you again to all of the panelists who participated in this session. There was quite a lot covered in that last talk: value and pricing, how developing countries can learn from developed countries, alternative financing, and circling back to the trust enabler and what it takes to be able to use that trust to create a better healthcare system and greater health equity. To help us close out this event, I'd like to now invite Jean-Gaëtan Guillemot, Director of Government Affairs and Sustainability from Zuellig Pharma, to share his views on the event and on the topic of addressing health inequality.
Thank you, Tony. A very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Jean-Gaëtan Guillemot, Regional Director for Government Affairs and Sustainability at Zuellig Pharma. So with a few minutes left to go today, I'd like to express my appreciation to our speakers, to our moderators, and to our host, Tony Estrella, for these thought-provoking discussions. Thank you also to the 2,000 persons who have attended this event. Allow me to share a few personal takeaways from today. Some data points shared by our experts today have really stuck with me. One of them is the fact that $1 invested in immunization helps avoid, in average, $44 in treatment cost. This exemplifies quite well how important preventive care and access to care centers are key moving forward. This also highlights how healthcare is about allocating resources wisely. It has been a common thread through our discussions today, for instance, when discussing transforming supply chain systems to prevent vaccine wastage. So the question becomes, how do we foster these discussions, gather and share data points and real-life evidence, and lead data-driven discussions on where investments are most needed? Today has been also for me about broadening horizons in terms of how much can be achieved. We heard about how digital solutions can, for instance, empower patients to seek inpatient services from home and access treatment for 60% of the cost while achieving desired or even better clinical outcomes. What a fantastic demonstration of the impact of innovative healthcare. Today, with a mix of public and private stakeholders around the table, discussions have shown how we can operate a paradigm shift and envision conversations such as regulatory harmonization, not as points of divergence, but as areas of convergence and partnership. Another key notion we can all take away today is the need for the industry to double down on sustainability efforts, to put patients at the center of our approach, decarbonize our operations, and energize our organizations around the topic of equitable access to healthcare. And talking about finite resources, what a thought-provoking session we just had on the topic of value-based healthcare, with reimbursement being based on the quality of health outcomes rather than quantity of services rendered. Finally, I was struck by the deep meaning of some of the insights we heard today, from the sanctity of the relation between doctor and patient to the legacy we can choose to leave behind through the actions we take today as healthcare stakeholders. What a great reminder of the purpose of what we do and, of course, of events such as this one. So today's conversations have helped identify new ways in which we can work together to improve access to healthcare innovations. Importantly, this event does not mark the end of the initiative. Over the next weeks, today's insights will be consolidated and enriched as part of a white paper designed with PRMA, the EU-ASEAN Business Council, and key healthcare experts. This white paper will then be published and shared with today's attendees, but also governments across Asia to then take today's discussions into action. And on this note, I would like to thank our organizing team, the EU-ASEAN Business Council, our knowledge partner, PRMA, and our events management partner, Blue Pocket. I hope you have enjoyed the summit, and I'm looking forward to you attending the next one. On behalf of Zuellig Pharma, thank you.
Great, thank you, Jean. And we have now come to the end of the summit. Thank you again for your time. This topic of empowering more equitable access to healthcare innovation is truly one of the great global challenges. As I've been working on a new book on this topic of health equity and dealing with health inequality, I've learned a lot from today to enhance my thinking. We are in an era where healthcare innovations will continue to be created and brought into the hands of providers and individuals. But if we're truly going to bridge the access divide, we need a mindset shift in the role of what private industry should take in order to solve this problem for good. We can't rely on governments alone to address these health inequalities and inequities, otherwise we'll still be stuck in first gear. On behalf of the organizing committee in Zuellig Pharma, I'm Tony Estrella. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you had a fruitful, insightful time. And one last request before you leave, a final reminder to share your feedback by scanning the QR code on your screen. Do explore the virtual exhibit hall on the Summit's website. Keep an eye out for this white paper that will be coming out soon, and have a wonderful afternoon.